Christy, Mary, thank you so much for joining us today. How's your day gone so far?
Awesome.
Pretty good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So for today's episode, we're going to be filling in for Steph. Steph is out on leave today, and I'm John Massey, a principal optimization architect on the optics team, and our show is The Keys to AWS Optimization. And this is the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock cost optimization on AWS. And we are very excited today because we've got 4 guests who are going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about S3 optimization. So I'm really excited. We've kind of split this into a couple different parts, and we're going to really be focusing on some of the real world lessons, from our experts that are joining us today. So I'm super excited to have a couple of our friends here. And Christy, Mary, if you'd like to just kind of take a minute and give our audience, a little bit of an introduction, the 1-minute origin story, a little bit of background on yourself and how you got to AWS, and how you got involved in S3. It'd be a great way to kick us off.
Sure. Go ahead, Christy.
Oh, sure. So my name is Christy Lee. I'm a principal solutions architect at AWS. I've been here for a little bit over 3 years. And during my time here, I've had the pleasure of working with many customers across their storage initiatives, including cost optimization for S3.
And I'm Mary Quinn. I'm a senior go-to-market specialist. I support our data and AI business, and I have been in the storage industry for longer than I'm going to admit online. So that's what's brought me here.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting parts about optimization when it comes to S3, like I think about a quote, Christy, that one of our customers had told us, where they looked at really this being about efficiency with data, and they were like, cost optimization is a big part of that efficiency story, but it's about efficient use of it, retention of the data, everything, and cost really plays a role in all of that, right? So everyone who's working with storage and working with objects in S3, cost optimization and cost considerations are a big part of that. And one of the cool parts about this and why we've got so many things to talk about today is that we have a lot of awesome cost levers when it comes to S3. And this gives us a lot of different knobs and dials to tune for really all of the workloads. So I think that's one of the very cool parts about this topic is there's a lot of different places that we can kind of dial this in based on different workloads and different considerations. But from your lens, looking at S3 usage, do you feel like cost is something that your customers are kind of bringing to the forefront, or is it something that they're looking at maybe secondary to other design considerations?
From the conversations I've had with my customers, it always seems like it's complementary to the initiatives that are ongoing for them. Customers are looking for growth. Customers are looking to build their new ideas and fund their business ideas, but they don't want to do it while not considering spend as well. So it really goes hand in hand with their own initiatives.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I think it's woven into everything that customers are doing nowadays. I think that just over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of focus on building a discipline around cost management, and it's really great to see.
Yeah, so we really want to take the first 30 minutes and talk about some of the pricing considerations that come with this before we bring in Judith and Prachi to talk a little bit more about some of the tools that we have available and the S3 playbooks that help guide optimization. Where would y'all like to kind of start with talking about some of the cost considerations?
Yeah, so Mary and we have a couple of user stories that we wanted to walk through in terms of what are the typical questions that we get from our customers. I thought we would start with an overview of the storage classes, and then we can talk about some of those questions that we typically get to help customers with identifying those optimization opportunities.
Perfect. Cool. Let's go ahead and get started here. And Chris, do you want me to bring up those your screen so we could start talking through the storage classes as a place to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
All right. So hopefully that's coming through good. Okay.
Yes.
So perfect. So whether you're new to AWS, new to Amazon S3, or you're an existing user of Amazon, you may be aware that we've got a variety of storage classes that are available to you. Now, these range from different costs per gigabyte, depending on what your access patterns are going to be, what your retention is going to be. Mary and I are going to go through some of those scenarios of which one do you choose for which. It might seem like there are a lot of choices, but we'll quickly break it down for you. So starting from the second to the left, S3 standard is going to be your default storage class whenever you write new objects or new data into your S3 buckets. This is for your frequently accessed data. While it does have the highest cost per gigabyte, it does have the lowest cost in terms of your request charges, meaning those reads and writes that you're executing upon your buckets. That will be the most cost efficient if you've got very hot data, so to speak. Now, next on the list is standard infrequent access. Like the name suggests, it's for warm data, if you like. It's less frequently accessed, not as hot as S3 standard. So the cost per gigabyte comes down, but the costs for your requests go up a little bit. And then the trend continues so forth with ones on infrequent access, Glacier instant retrieval. Now, all of these are essentially what we call synchronous storage classes, meaning that you'll get millisecond access. They would be within milliseconds to retrieve your objects, would you need to read and write to them. I intentionally skipped intelligent tiering because what intelligent tiering does is it encapsulates S3 standard frequent access, and Glacier instant retrieval as part of its determination of like where should your objects live across these storage classes without you having to worry about should it be in standard, should it be in standard frequent access, should it be Glacier instant retrieval. It's a really fantastic tool to help customers get those optimizations without having to worry about what are my access patterns going to be, how frequently accessed are my objects going to be. Mary and I are going to talk through a little bit of when do you want to use intelligent tiering and when do you want to maybe tailor your storage classes a little bit further to get those additional optimizations. Last but not least, we have those asynchronous storage classes being Glacier flexible retrieval, Glacier deep archive. These are, like the name suggests, are for your colder data. They are going to be along the lines of if you're okay tolerating minutes to hours to retrieve your objects, they do offer the best dollar cost per gigabyte for your objects.
And so for the folks that are out there in the audience, like what might be a scenario for that where someone is able to just work with asynchronous access to that data instead of millisecond access?
Sure. So these would be for more your archival use cases. Maybe I only need access to my objects in the event of a disaster. Maybe it's a secondary copy of my data where I've been replicating my objects from one side to another. And I'm not intending to access them very frequently, but I do need access to them. And I'm able to tolerate some time to restore and get access to those objects.
Cool. And I think that's worth calling out because we've worked with a lot of customers who, they're exploring these different storage classes and they want to understand, hey, from the different options that are available, which ones are going to have, application level considerations and which ones are really just like a cost consideration, where it's a different pricing structure. So glad you kind of called that out because as, folks are looking at, optimization opportunities across the S3 landscape, to take into account, some of those pieces that, is it an access pattern thing, or is this something that could be a material change that, is requiring consideration at the app level?
Definitely. Before we go into those scenarios, I do want to show a little bit of what the cost difference is going to be between the storage classes. So just to baseline us, I've modeled the pricing on North Virginia, so USD1, and what 1 petabyte of storage would look like in each of these storage classes. This is just to show the range of savings that you could get by adopting these various storage classes. This is represented as a per month cost. So the most expensive on our list is going to be S3 standard out of these options. And then the percentage that you see is based off of the price difference from S3 standard. So between just S3 standard and standard infrequent access alone, that's a 40% savings for our customers if their workload would be a good fit for that infrequent access storage class. And it only gets better from there. So there's so much potential savings that, John, you and I, we've worked with customers and we've saved them in the upwards of millions of dollars by adopting these storage classes, and it's always so exciting to see.
Yeah, and I think it's worth kind of calling this out because you look at a table like this and we see what that range is, compared back over to S3 standard, and you're talking about savings scenarios that can go upwards of 85% savings. And it's wild. It's wild to think that there are opportunities and options available that can reduce the cost that significantly and can be a perfect fit for a specific workload and really be the right option to go through and implement. I want to just kind of clarify one thing that I think I heard you say there, Christy, is when we're looking at those costs that you have down at the bottom, we're talking about just the stored capacity cost, right? As far as pricing dimension. Okay, cool.
Yes. So that's something we definitely don't want to ignore when it comes to pricing or considering these storage classes. Actually, Mary, I know you work with a lot of customers who ask about which of these storage classes should they adopt for their workloads. And I know it varies depending on their use cases, their types of workloads. Yeah. I was wondering if you could shed some light on some of the questions that you typically get.
Yeah. So, when I'm talking to customers and they hear that really dramatic difference in the costs between, S3 standard and Glacier Deep Archive, maybe I've shared that the same slide that, you have up on the screen. There's this natural instant rush to, try and figure out, let's get everything into Glacier Deep Archive. It is super cost effective. Glacier Deep Archive is designed to be super cost effective, but it's not cost effective for everything. So I just have to take a step back and just have this conversation. And I'm just wondering what that sounds like for you, Christy, when you're talking to your customers, because as we know, Glacier Deep Archive isn't cost effective for everything.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And you could say that depending on your use case, there's always going to be a fit, and it may not be the one that you think of. Right. So the main considerations, whether it's Glacier Deep Archive or one of the other storage classes, is you've got to think about what are your transition costs going to be. There's going to be a per object transition cost. So especially if you've got buckets with a lot of small objects, that's something to think about. Usually we're talking in the range of I've got maybe billions of objects in my buckets. If I'm going to transition them all, even though it's a one-time cost, that can take a long time to break even. And just like how the request costs from standard to infrequent access to Glacier Instant Retrieval, the colder you get, the higher the transition costs go, the higher the request costs go. So that all kind of, it's like a sliding scale that goes this way, depending on your cost per gigabyte and your request costs. The other thing to think about, especially for Glacier Deep Archive and also Glacier Flexible Retrieval, is that there's going to be a time to restore. So they aren't synchronous access. It's not that millisecond access that you might be used to with S3 standard. And last but not least, there's also going to be data retrieval costs that are per gigabyte. So depending how often you plan to retrieve from these storage classes, that can also add up.
Yeah, for sure. Now, sometimes I'll run across a customer that's using S3 as a temporary data store, or maybe they're using it for scratch space. And so what is typically your guidance there?
Certainly. So the other thing to think about was, even though we get better savings on a cost per gigabyte with the colder storage classes or the infrequent storage classes, there's also a minimum billable duration associated with standard and frequent access. Actually, I've got a slide that shows that. Here we go. So whether it's standard and frequent access, OneZone, Glacier Instant Retrieval, Glacier Flexible, Glacier Deep, these have minimum billable durations, meaning if I'm not intending to retain my objects longer than 30 days or 90 days, I can end up paying for early delete charges associated with my objects. Meaning if I keep my objects for 2 weeks and then I decide to delete them, but they happen to be in one of these classes, I'm going to be effectively charged the capacity for the full duration of that object, being 30 days or 90 days. So therefore, our recommendation is if it's known that you've got almost like you're treating S3 like a cache where you're temporarily storing your objects, maybe doing some kind of transformation on them, but then cleaning them up and deleting them within like about a month's period, it's really better and more ideal to keep them in S3 standard.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. I run across many customers, I would almost say most customers, that actually don't know their access patterns. And it's just so common. And so has that been your experience? And then what do you recommend to those customers?
Oh, all the time. I work with some large customers who have to uh, who have a, let's say, diverse set of users who they're managing like hundreds, if not thousands, of AWS accounts, and then you multiply that with a couple, could be tens of thousands of S3 buckets, and across that footprint, it's just while they may have a sense of what their access patterns might be for some of their buckets, it's hard to gauge what their access patterns are going to be across all of their buckets.
Right.
So for these customers, they're essentially looking for that easy button, like, oh, can S3 just do the hard work for me and figure it out and just optimize on my behalf? And those use cases are essentially what intelligent tiering was designed to address. The way intelligent tiering works is what it does is it monitors your objects that are over 128 kilobytes for what their access patterns are. It looks at when was the last time this object was read. And then based on that access, it can make a determination on your behalf to say, oh, okay, this object's cold. I could get additional savings by moving it into the equivalent for standard and frequent access or into the equivalent for Glacier instant retrieval. That way, as soon as your objects are in intelligent tiering, it's going to start monitoring and then helping you make those decisions to help you optimize. It's really a fantastic tool for our customers who don't know what their access patterns may be, especially across a large footprint.
I think there's another scenario there too, where if the access patterns are changing or you don't know what they are, great tool. We've also heard from customers, that they want to get away from a pattern of having to analyze every single workload and have to understand what the positioning is for different storage classes. If you've got thousands, tens of thousands, or more buckets, and using intelligent tiering as a way to kind of reduce some of the operational overhead that comes with optimization can provide huge savings for them. And I saw a question that came in here around what are maybe some of those anti-patterns for intelligent tiering. So if folks are looking to leverage this, they want to be able to use this within the organization. What are the cases where they probably never want to use intelligent tiering? Are there any of those scenarios?
For sure. So while intelligent tiering is fantastic in terms of what it's been able to help our customers with saving, and just some quick stats, intelligent tiering has been made available since 2018. It's fairly mature at this point, and based on the adoption from our customers, we've seen it save our customers in around $2 billion, which is pretty impressive. But even with that doesn't mean it's always going to be the best fit for every single workload. And the main considerations there that you've got to think about is what is my number of objects that I'm going to be putting into intelligent tiering? Because one of the levers that intelligent tiering has that the other storage classes doesn't is because it's monitoring your objects for that access pattern, there is a per object monitoring fee. So when we're talking in the scale of billions of objects, that can really add up. That's a monthly monitoring fee charge that you're going to be constantly paying, especially if you have a lot of objects. The other one to think about of where I may want to choose intelligent tiering, or maybe I don't want to choose intelligent tiering, is if I have fairly predictable access patterns. So for example, if we talk about backup and archive, if I know my data is going to be primarily cold, rarely accessed, maybe once a year, I'm going to be able to achieve additional savings by tailoring the storage classes that I have for my objects.
That brings up also another scenario too, where I saw a call out that someone had dropped in the chat around setting retention policies and kind of defining some of those things. There are some access patterns and there are some things that maybe are controllable. If you're pulling log data out or you've got an app that's doing things within certain access patterns, maybe you could be mindful of some of the different dimensions and different characteristics of those storage classes to optimize your usage to best fit within those cases. We've seen customers do this where they have maybe data that's within intelligent tiering. If they're going to pull anything out, they're going to access anything, they want to try to consolidate that within that period of time that they first wrote the data, so they're not retrieving stuff from an optimized tier of intelligent tiering. Maybe right after it's transitioned over, they can kind of be mindful of how their app is maybe interacting with the data in order to maximize the savings.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about the intelligent tiering, which I think is more often than not the right answer for customers. But then you have the opposite, and you have the customers that actually do know their access patterns and they're really confident about it. And this is one of the anti-patterns for intelligent tiering. So let's say, as an example, the access pattern is just a super simple one, is like the data is frequently accessed for the first 30 days. And then it's rarely accessed, so not more than, say, once a quarter. So when you find a customer that's knowledgeable like that, what's your answer?
Yeah, certainly. So if the customer's got a good amount of confidence, maybe they've had their workload for some time, they've had a chance to analyze its access pattern, and they're confident 30 days hot and then fairly cold or rarely accessed afterwards, we can design something like leveraging lifecycle rules to say at the 30-day mark, so 30 days from the create date, by default, it's going to be an S3 standard. And then at 30 days, have it transition to something like either a Glacier instant retrieval if you do need that synchronous access, or if you want to take advantage of our colder tiers and asynchronous is okay, you can look at Glacier Flexible or Glacier Deep Archive.
Right, exactly. I'm always very concerned in my work about the cost implications of object size. I talk about it all the time. I try to weave it into every presentation that I give just because it's so important. And I even have this mantra, and I repeat this because I'm hoping it'll help make it stick in people's minds. It's like the S3 cost model favors large objects. So what do you think? And what do you say to customers when you're talking to them about object size?
So we released this feature, I can't remember exactly when, but it was not that long ago, where we enabled customers to be able to customize their lifecycle rules by object size. And I think it's the neatest thing. And it surprises me all the time that I work with these AWS customers who aren't yet aware that we've got this available to them. The reason why it's key is if you look at the minimum billable object size, you'll see that for some of the synchronous storage classes, there is a minimum billable of about 128 kilobytes. But notice for Glacier Flexible and for Glacier Deep Archive, it doesn't actually have a minimum billable, meaning it will allow you to transition really small objects as well as really large objects, but really small objects over to those asynchronous tiers where you've got that higher per object transition cost. And that can add up to quite a lot of money, especially when we're talking about a large number of objects who are also really small, meaning that it's going to take a long time, maybe months, and sometimes even years to break even on those cost savings. So customers really have to be wary of that when it comes to choosing one of these storage classes to adopt. We've seen use cases where customers, even though they may be retaining their objects for years and years, might actually be better staying in S3 standard because of the number of objects they have and because of the size of the objects they have. So the recommendation I have is, if you are looking to adopt, especially those asynchronous tiers, consider setting a minimum filter for object size of about maybe 512 kilobytes is a good rule of thumb. You can further customize that to your liking, but yeah, it's something to consider.
Yeah, super important, super important.
Well, I love the mantra, Mary. I think that's a good one for like everyone to like write that one down. Especially we see a lot of customers that are trying to build some of those standard practices, right, for net new workloads, optimization patterns, and I think that one around favoring large objects, knowing your object size, knowing your object count, put those in bold, put those up at the top. And the life cycle transition filters that you mentioned in there, Christy. I wanted to share one of my favorite reInvent talks that came out in 2021, and it is an awesome deep dive into optimizing and fine tuning all the life cycle transition processes and how you can use those filters. And for anyone out there that's interested in kind of really nerding out on it and getting into the details of what could this look like in different scenarios, spend a little bit of time and check out that reInvent talk. It's really cool, and it has a lot of good visuals that walk through like how you can do that, because there's a lot of cases. And this was something that you had shown me before, Christy, where you might have that S3 bucket that has a big distribution, or a distribution that's favoring larger object sizes, and maybe you only have to optimize a small percentage of it to get the majority of your savings. And that's something that's worth diving into to really be able to kind of maximize and pay attention to those areas that are probably some of the golden nuggets for having savings opportunities within our organization.
Yeah, actually, John, you remind me of something, and I often forget to mention this. But as a good way to like just kind of encapsulate this as a mental model is when you're choosing which of these storage classes to adopt for your S3 footprint, just remember it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You can customize it to say, I want this prefix to have these rules. I want this prefix to have these other rules. Just because you got a bucket doesn't mean everything's got to go into a storage class. You can certainly tailor it to say, I only want this prefix, or I only want objects of these particular sizes to be eligible for these rules. So customers can get as granular as they want in terms of defining how they want their optimizations to be.
That's a great reminder. And we talked through a lot of different details on different patterns and different things to be mindful of as folks are looking for optimization opportunities. This is another one that I think sometimes is very helpful, but is not the first thing that comes up when you start poking around or looking at optimizations. It's this S3, the FAQs on the S3 pricing page, right? And it goes through and shows a lot of different models for what these costs can look like for different scenarios, gives some good illustrative examples. I love the reInvent talks and all this great stuff out here, but I found that the FAQ page is it's an awesome starting point. And the same thing with just the pricing page as a whole, to understand all those different cost dimensions and look at it, just like you had laid out there. So folks can kind of wrap their heads around like what's available, what are the opportunities that I have, and what are some of the considerations to look at.
Yeah, if I could leave a takeaway with any customer, it would be, one, go look at that pricing page. Don't just look at that cost per gigabyte. Look at those transition costs, look at those data retrieval costs, and look at those request costs as well.
Right.
All of those need to be factored in when you're trying to decide which of these storage classes are the best fit. And then if you've got questions, come talk to your AWS team. We'd always be happy to have that conversation.
That's a great call out, because every one of those is going to be a little bit special, and or maybe there are cases that are special that you just want to have an extra set of eyes on. Worth being able to reach out, get some extra help there.
And with that, we wanted to also give something to the community where if you're trying to do some discovery within your own teams, trying to understand, which of these storage classes should I be looking at, or could I further cost optimize? We prepared a list of questions, happy to share this out, that you can work with your own teams and your consumers to figure out, are there optimizations that I could get out of my S3 buckets. So these are essentially encapsulating some of the stories that we've talked about today, and I hope this was useful.
Yeah. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, John. I think what we have coming up next is Judith and Prachi, and Judith is going to talk about a great resource for learning more about how to optimize costs around S3, but also other AWS services as well. And then Prachi's going to get kind of hands-on, and she's going to show you a tool we call S3 Storage Lens. It's something that you should absolutely become familiar with because it'll be your best friend relative to cost optimization.
That's awesome. And, folks want to take a screenshot of this, go ahead, take a screenshot. I love these call outs here. This is awesome. And we'll have the episode, available on demand on YouTube after, for folks to be able to revisit this. But yeah, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Christy. There's a lot of awesome nuggets that will, help everyone out there save a lot of money on their S3. So really appreciate that. And let's cut it over now. We're going to bring in Judith and Prachi to talk about some of the tooling and the playbook. So thanks, Christy. Thanks, Mary. Judith, Prachi, thank you so much for joining us. And we're, stepping into the second half of our episode here on S3 optimization. So, wanted to say thank you both for joining us. And maybe just like we did with Mary and with Christy, would love for you both to kind of give a little bit of background on yourselves. How'd you guys get to Amazon? How'd you guys get involved in S3? Give us a little bit of background if you want to just take a second and share your 1-minute origin story for everyone.
Sure. Thanks, John. My name is Judith Lenner. I'm a senior technical account manager based in Israel. And I'm also part of the cost optimization CFM community in AWS, and I'm leading CFM tips. And I think that working with customers and understanding their cost optimization questions got me here talking about CFM tips and cost optimization in general.
Awesome. Thanks, Judith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, John, for having us. I'm Prachi. I'm a senior storage SA aligned to S3. I've been with AWS for around 6 years. I started my journey working with customers' technical problem on storage, and now I'm helping them designing their environment and optimize S3 as a part of their environment. That's my day-to-day role.
Great. Well, thank you so much for both joining us. And some people might recognize, Judith as a familiar face from talking about the CFM playbooks in the past, about 6 months ago, I think, if that's right. I'll drop the link to that one, out here into our chat for folks to be able to go through and check that one out too. It's awesome. This is a fantastic resource. If you're looking for optimization, for any of your AWS services, this is another one of those resources that's just a great starting point for it, to start to be able to look at different cost levers and how you should explore those dimensions. But we'll, share more detail on the playbooks and kind of get into, more on that in just a moment here. But want to say thank you both for that background and for joining us today. So we spent 30 minutes in the first half talking to, Mary and Christy about some of the pricing dimensions, things like lifecycle transitions, the different storage class options that are available. Can you help kind of bring us into this second section, around some of the tools that are available for us, to understand how we can perform optimizations and start turning this into action?
Sure. So first, thanks, Mary and Christy, for setting up the background. John, if you can bring up my screen, then we will start with doing a short overview about CFM tips, but afterwards, we want to focus on the different tools. So we will also share the link for the CFM tips in the chat. And just a quick overview. So in CFM tips, we have 4 pillars. The first one is cultural change, because we understand when organizations start to think about cost optimization, we want them to start being more cost aware and have a cost aware culture inside the organization. So we are using the well-architected best practices for that, and we are covering it here. After that, we recommend you to go into the foundations pillar, all the basic guardrails that you need to put in place before you start talking about cost optimization. So we are talking about setting up budgets, configuring cost anomaly monitors, and start talking about tagging strategy. After that, we will go into the visualizations pillar, where we want you to understand the different tools that we have in AWS for cost visibility, and we will cover some of them in the S3 playbook. And at the end, we have the playbooks pillar. And the playbooks pillar is split into domains, and we are covering more than 40 services today. And every month we try to add more services. But today we are going to focus on the storage domain on S3 playbook. So here you can see the homepage of the S3 playbook, and every playbook starts with the general spend, because the first thing that we want you is to understand the different cost components in every playbook. So for S3, the different cost components are the storage, data transfer, API, and data retrieval costs. And on top of that, we want to help you understand how you can identify your S3 costs. So in this case, we are showing you how you can use Kudos dashboard to identify your top 10 buckets, which tab you need to go into, and which specific visual will help you understand that. And we also explain how you can get this kind of visibility with Cost Explorer, meaning which filters and group by you need to select in order to understand your cost and usage. After that, we also use additional tools that Prachi will share with us soon, is how you can use storage lens, and also how you can run a Athena query over the cost and usage report. So now after we understand S3 general spend, we have 4 main strategies for S3 cost optimization. And the first strategy is choosing the right storage class. So Christy did an overview about the different storage class that we have, and you can read all about them over here. But you can see the same comparison table about the different storage class, and then you can think about which one is the best fit for you according to the retrieval performance or the minimum duration that you have. So you can think about the right storage class for you. And we also describe how you can identify your storage usage while using Kudos dashboard, which visual will help you identify only your daily storage usage. And we also explain how you can do that with Cost Explorer, how you can focus only on S3 storage and understand the different trends over time. After that, the next strategy is use intelligent tiering strategically. So Christy and Mary covered it, and we recommend you to use intelligent tiering when the workload when the workload is not well understood, or when you have a plan for a long-term data retention. So in this case, intelligent tiering is a good fit. And I know, John, you had a question about AntiPatterns that Christy covered. So we also have it here about the different AntiPatterns for intelligent tiering. And then we also explain how to see it with the different tools. And I will go to the third strategy, which is talking about using S3 lifecycle configurations with filter, because using a lifecycle policy will help you to transition objects to colder storage class or expired objects that you don't need, meaning it will help you delete data that you don't need. And you can use storage lens to understand specific use cases where you can configure lifecycle policy. So for example, on this specific topic, we are talking about how to identify incomplete multi-part uploads that Prachi will show us very soon. And if I will drill down, we have some guidance, some best practices, how to optimize this specific usage, how to optimize your data into archiving data in S3. And the last strategy that I want to cover today is be mindful of your object size. For example, if you are talking about minimizing API charges, so you are being billed on the size of your objects. Sorry, you are being billed for the number of objects and not the size of your object. So we recommend you to aggregate the objects and have bigger objects, and then you will be able to optimize your API charges. So on this particular topic, we are covering how you can see only the API cost of your S3 usage, so which filters you need to put in order to understand that. and also how you can understand that with storage lens and CloudWatch metrics. And here at the end, we have some guidance how you can minimize your API charges. So at the end, the purpose of the S3 playbook is to help you understand your S3 usage and also be aware of the 4 main strategies for cost optimization. So it will help you optimize your own workload. Now we'll move it to Prachi to show us a demo on storage lens, how you can identify specific use cases.
It's awesome, Judith. And just I guess before we sort of tie off on the playbooks, I mean, there's just so many different little nuggets in there, you know, to help identify different optimization patterns and resources that are already available. I mean, I love that last one around looking at the APIs. There was a comment around here I saw back in the chat around folks being able to do logging and being able to capture more information to get insights. And there might be some cases where folks don't have that, but Cost Explorer is something that's going to let everyone be able to go back and look at those historical trends around different API patterns. And we've seen a lot of customers where they're surprised, or they didn't really know that as their app had started to scale, that maybe certain things that they had baked into the application, may have opportunities for revising or improving efficiency down the road. So like if they're doing a lot of, reads and writes, and they can reduce the frequency of performing those, there could be a cost savings opportunity. How they're going through and being able to pull metadata back from, S3 objects, looking at, what already exists in the workloads and how things are changing, and using Cost Explorer as kind of a free resource of trend data is a really cool way to get insights without having to set anything else up. So I love all the tips and tricks in there, and there's something for everyone, I think, within the playbooks. It's a really cool resource. But Prachi, let me go ahead and bring your screen up as we go through and do this. And I think I just might need you to present that back out for me one more time. Oh, no, here it is. Got it.
Thank
So
you,
we got
John.
that. Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get started into Storage Lens. And before we jump on and get our hand dirty, let me just do a quick overview of Storage Lens, what really Storage Lens is. So Storage Lens delivers organization-wide capabilities or visibility into your object storage usage and activity trends. This also makes actionable recommendations to improve cost efficiency and apply data protection best practices using an interactive dashboard. Now, S3 Storage Lens is the first cloud storage analytical solution to provide a single view of object storage, usage, and activity across tens to hundreds of accounts in an organization, where you can drill down by regions, storage class, buckets, and even prefix. Further, you have multiple ways to access the Storage Lens data, and you can go granular based on the usage or activity metrics as well. Now, in the storage optimization cycle context, S3 Storage Lens is the recommended tool to continuously observe your data and audit the impact of your organizational actions on the storage footprint. Storage Lens contains more than 60 metrics grouped into free and advanced metrics. Now, within the free metrics, we can analyze usage based on daily snapshot of your objects, which are organized or categorized into cost optimization, data protection, access management, performance, and events. While within the advanced metrics, you receive metrics related to activity such as request counts, advanced cost optimization such as S3 lifecycle rule counts, advanced data protection such as S3 replication rule counts, and detailed status codes such as 403 errors, 5xx errors, etc. This again can all be configured in an interactive dashboard to get the insights into your S3 data. Now, as I mentioned earlier, S3 Storage Lens offers a free version. This is also auto-enabled in every account. And there's also an optional paid version you can upgrade to for extended visibility. With Storage Lens Advanced, you gain 35 additional metrics, including metrics which can help you identify cold or abandoned buckets, and other metrics like lifecycle rules, status codes, etc. Another important thing, or the another benefit which you get, is you receive significantly more historical data with 15 months of data versus just 14 days in the free tier. This also enables greater historical trend analysis. In advanced tier, you also receive prefix level insights, which give you the ability to see granular usage within large shared buckets for cost allocation. And finally, you can publish the metrics to CloudWatch and set up automated alarms for any of the storage lens metrics. So let's get started. And before we see the use cases, let's create a storage lens dashboard with advanced metrics. So I'm already here in the S3 console. Under the storage lens, navigate to dashboard. Once you're here, you'll see there's a default account dashboard which pops up here. This is a pre-configured dashboard which help you visualize and summarize insights and trends of your entire account, and it's updated daily. You can't really modify the configurational scope of this default dashboard, but you can upgrade it to the advanced metrics. So today, I'm going to create a new dashboard or a custom dashboard with advanced metrics. Provide an interactive name for the dashboard. Set the status. Once you set the status as enable, it will automatically update the metrics on the daily basis. Further, for the scope, you can include regions and buckets, or you can exclude certain regions and bucket as per your choice. The dashboard scope chooses whether you would like to include or exclude certain region, buckets, organization, or both to change the scope of your dashboard. Right.
Prachi, I want to just go back to something that you mentioned right when you brought that up. So there's a default dashboard that is right. Available, for no additional cost, right? That everyone's going to have access to within S3 Lens, so that they can go through and use those free metrics right out of the box.
That is true. That is true. So you don't even have to configure it. You'll get it, and it's an account level snapshot. Like I mentioned, you can't really change the configuration of those configuration of the dashboard, but you can still go ahead and enable advanced metrics if you want to on the pre-configured dashboard as well. But you don't pay for that dashboard. It's a free metrics which are enabled in your account. You can just go ahead and start exploring how the storage lens metrics and the dashboard looks like in your account as well for your account snapshots.
Cool. It's an awesome feature. So I just want folks to know that they can go ahead and they can get started with that without any additional cost. As something that's available out of the box. But sure. This is awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, John. So under the metrics, like we discussed, we have free metrics and advanced metrics. We do have like John was mentioning, we have a default dashboard with the free metrics enabled. But here I'm going to select the advanced metrics, because advanced metrics help you not just have different categories, but it also helps you different features, which are again not just charged differently. They are still a package of just the advanced features. So you can publish metrics, you can have groups, you can have prefix aggregation under just one particular configuration. Another thing which I didn't talk about earlier is the export feature, which you can do. So if you choose to enable this, your dashboard metrics would be exported to a S3 bucket every 24 hours. And you can select the generation of a metrics based on CSV or Apache Parquet format of your choice here. And you can also choose to put the metrics on this account or a different account. If I just go ahead and select any of my bucket here, S3 would automatically place a policy on your behalf, so that S3 can update the metrics in that particular bucket. Now, once from here, you can actually ingest the metrics, export into an analytical tool of your choice, such as Amazon QuickSight or Amazon Athena, where you can analyze storage usage and activity trends. Once you are satisfied with the configuration, you can go ahead and click on Create Dashboard. Now, as you can see, it says it can take up to 48 hours. We don't have 48 hours for this session. And so what I've done is I've actually created a dashboard beforehand, and that's called as a Lens Workshop dashboard. Just giving a very brief overview of what the dashboard looks like. The dashboard has filters where you can apply filters based on regions, storage class, buckets, prefixes, etc. We have an overview section which shows you the snapshot of your account. It talks about storage classes, total storage, active buckets, accounts, and all requests. The metrics which you see here, all requests would only be included if you have advanced metrics enabled. If not, then we do have the metrics till the accounts section. Now, just below that, there's a trends and distribution metrics which you see here. This is basically for you to compare two metrics over date range, which you can specify to view trends over time. Right below it, there's a storage class distribution across storage class and regions. You can again drill down to different categories of your choice, or you can analyze based on regions, buckets, prefixes, etc. It helps you gets you a visualization where majority of your storage and the object are located for your S3 buckets. Just below that, we have an overview tab which allows you to perform top N analysis of a metric over a date range, where N can be between 1 to 25. So on the screen, I have selected the top N as 3 with descending orders, which help me view my top 3 buckets based on storage, based on the change rate, and the top 3 prefixes as well. Right. I That brings me to the end of just showing you how the dashboard looks like. But I remember, Judith, you were asking me a few questions before the session was getting started about on storage lens, and your customer was looking to getting some insights for their data, right? I think this would be a good platform. Yeah, awesome.
Yes, thanks, Prati. I think storage length is very important to understand S3 usage, but the first question I'm being asked as a technical account manager from customers is how we can identify the biggest buckets.
So I think this is a very important question, specifically as you want to plan and budget for operational expenditures. Understanding the storage growth trend is vital. So if you're under the trends and distribution graph, you can see how your total storage and object count is trending. Now, if you want to drill down to a particular bucket, which is having the most storage, what I would recommend is navigating to the buckets tab. Once you're inside the bucket tabs, have the metric as total storage. And here you can see how the total storage has been trending over time for a particular bucket, right? And on this particular graph, you can see the Lens Workshop development bucket, which I had the consistent growth while also having the largest storage here. Now, once you're here, you can again drill down on certain prefix. If you want, so if you just want to do it, just click on any part of the line of the graph and I just want to analyze by, let's say, prefix. I can go ahead and click on apply. What this would do is this would basically tell me the distribution on the prefix level for my particular bucket, how it's there. So I can see this particular bucket had 2 prefixes, ingest and images. The ingest is the one which is contributing to the most total storage for this particular bucket. Now, once you have this inside, you can again go back to your account owner or your bucket owner to check if this growth is expected or not. I hope, Judith, this helps you to answer the question.
Yeah, this is great. I think the follow-up question will be how customers can identify incomplete multi-part uploads.
Interesting. So let me do a quick recap of what multi-part upload is for our audience. So multi-part uploads are used to upload larger objects in parallel, which basically increase their upload performance. And many customers don't even realize they are using multi-part uploads because CLI and SDKs do it for them automatically. And usually this works really great, right? However, sometimes there's a problem. Let's say there's a network issue, or let's say the client dies during the upload and only some parts have been uploaded and the entire object is not complete. The parts are on S3, but they're not associated with any object. These are incomplete multi-part uploads. So customers are still charged for these bytes they can't use. And let's see how you can find it using storage lens. So in order to identify which bucket has incomplete multi-part upload, navigate to the buckets tab. Select the option as incomplete multi-part uploads greater than 7 days. Once this is there, the graph would update. Now, this is one of the cost optimization metrics, right? Here, the graph shows that the Lens Workshop Data Lake bucket has the largest or the most incomplete multi-part upload. You can again drill down or analyze the bucket as per your use case like we discussed earlier. Now, as a best practice and to automatically manage incomplete multi-part upload, you can use the S3 console to create lifecycle configuration to expire incomplete multi-part upload for after a specified number of days. We usually suggest 7 because that's a safe where we know if customers are taking more time to upload, it would be still safe to expire the incomplete multi-part uploads after 7 days.
Right. I think, it's very important customers can miss that opportunity for a cost optimization. So it's very important to use that. Mm-hmm. A more complex question that I get sometimes is we created a bucket a long time ago. It was used with one workload, but now we expanded. We have many of workloads, and we are not sure what's the trend that we have, which buckets gone cold. So how we can identify it?
That's an interesting one. I think what just correct me if I'm wrong. What do you mean by a cold bucket is usually that they're no longer accessed or rarely accessed?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, awesome, cool. So if that's the case where you want to really see the buckets which are, let's say, no longer accessed or rarely accessed, this is actually one of the indicators that the related workload is no longer in use. So since we have enabled advanced metrics here and you have access to the activity metrics, there are metrics like get, request, download bytes under the activity metrics, which can help you uh, understand how often your buckets are accessed each day. Now, the percentage retrieval, which you see here, is an important metric which can help you. And this metric is computed as download bytes per total storage. And this is a useful metric to understand the proportion of storage in a bucket that is accessed on a daily basis. One thing to keep in mind here is that this particular metrics or the download bytes are duplicate where the same object is downloaded multiple times a day. So in order to visualize, right, we also need to visualize which buckets have gone cold. We have a bubble analysis graph if we scroll down, which is a good way to do. So what I've done here is I have actually gone ahead and created a bubble analysis graph for this. A bubble analysis graph helps you map x-axis, y-axis, and a size of the bubble. So here what I have done is I have mapped it based on total storage, percentage retrieval, and an object average object size. Right. So now if I look at the development bucket, the Lens Workshop development bucket, I can see that it has a total storage of 136.8 gig, but just the retrieval rate of 0.52, right? Again, I can drill down to this particular bucket, prefix and all as I want to do. But this particular bucket really shows me that, okay, the storage size is huge, but the relative retrieval rate is pretty low, which also shows that the access pattern of this bucket is something which we need to monitor and go back and check with the team.
Yeah,
I hope
I think that's
awesome.
That's a great opportunity. Go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I love these call outs around being able to say, hey, I've got a big, footprint of stuff, and maybe I don't have all the insight into what's going on with these buckets. Maybe I'm, not involved with the specific workloads and I'm trying to, kind of survey the landscape. I can pick out these areas where we've got a lot of incomplete multi-part uploads, or we've got, infrequently accessed buckets or high growth buckets, or just our largest buckets, and start to, prioritize areas to investigate and kind of dig in a little bit further. I think it's so cool to be able to do that. You mentioned one other capability as part of one of the metrics within S3 Lens, which was around lifecycle policies. And I'm wondering if you could just touch on that one, just a little bit more, and just kind of maybe explain what that metric actually helps folks look at.
For sure. So we do have metrics like if you see in cost optimization, or if you see in data protection, we have metrics like just to identify which buckets are which buckets have those rules. But one of the important thing which can help you is if you identify a bucket which has a workload, let's say incomplete multi-part uploads or something, you can go back and apply lifecycle rules on your bucket. So for example, we identified the data lake bucket has incomplete multi-part upload. So what I can do here is I can actually go back to my data lake bucket, and under the management tab, I can create a lifecycle rule which can help me expire the incomplete multi-part uploads or transition the objects like Mary and Christy were discussing earlier. So in order to set a lifecycle rule, what I would do is I would just give a name for this lifecycle rule. Again, we can choose the scope like we were discussing earlier. We can limit the scope, or we can just apply it to all objects if you want. Now, since I want to expire my incomplete multi-part uploads, what I'll do here is I'll select delete expired object delete markers, and this would really help me to create that particular configuration here. Once I'm satisfied with this, I'll go ahead and create the rule for it. Oh, sorry. So I can just select 7 as the number of days which I want to specify. Once I'm satisfied, I'll just go ahead and create this. S3 would automatically take care of.
And Prachi, I hate to cut you short. I'm looking at the time here, and we're at the top of the hour. So I'm going to leave everyone with one last kind of final artifact here, which is one of my favorite blogs, 5 ways to reduce cost with S3 Lens. So folks can go back and kind of start to reference all this, look at those default dashboards and the metrics. Time always goes by so quick. And I just wanted to say thank you both so much for joining the show and giving us so much awesome stuff to kind of dive into and play with within our own environments to find optimization opportunities. So Steph will be back next week. thanks again to Mary, Christy, Judith, and Prachi for joining us. Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you for having us. Bye.